The following podcast contains opinions from paid professionals. The information provided in this podcast is general in nature and not advice. For free and confidential support, call 1800 858 858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
Welcome to episode 5 of So We Think, ahead of the Golden Rose Group 1 for the 3-year-olds on Saturday. And boy, I am looking forward to that, Ben Way. Before we get into that though, accountability check of things that we mentioned on last week's podcast. Starting with the T-Rose, and I reckon we have a star on our hands in Autumn Glow.
Yeah, so last week, hand up, I said there's no way I could take $1.75 about Autumn Glow against Manal, who was proven. And we said Manal's always up for the fight. It's just hard to believe any horse putting a gap on her. The gap was probably a length, but I think James made it a length. They probably could have won by further, truth be told. And while the barrier and map didn't look great, his genius was able to overcome that, and she was able to overcome that. As soon as she showed positional speed and she set outside, she was miles too good. So happy to believe the hype. As we said last week, the spring will be better if she is the gun that they all say she is. I don't know that the Flight Stakes will be as good if she's the gun that they think she is, because it's probably a 2-horse race now looking ahead. So anyway, she was fantastic, and yeah, the hype is real.
Yeah, I think it is. I think a lot of people in racing wanted to see her do that on the weekend.
Yeah.
Obviously, she'd had these 2 great first starts in the 72 and the up and coming, but then to come out and show versatility in how she raced, and knowing that I think she probably had another 3 or 4 lengths up her sleeve in the end was remarkable. I will say it was a surprise to see Manal jump so well and then posse up, considering that she's usually a get back, run on, good turn of foot kind of horse. So I still think Autumn Glow would have beaten her, seeing what we saw on the weekend, but it probably didn't aid her chances.
And no, if you were on Manal, now we talked about it. It was probably a difficult race to bet into when we did the show on the Wednesday night with $1.75. I think it was $4.50 about Manal. So you're kind of like, $1.75 doesn't get me in, but does the $4.50 if you're just going to run a pleasant second, third, or fourth anyway? But if you had have known that Manal would lead and she would be on your outside, I think you would have taken $1.30.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I completely agree with that.
anyway.
But I do think we've got a star on our hands, and that's exciting going forward. The Underwood over the 1,800 metres at Caulfield. We both thought that Faulkner Park would run on nicely, not win, but hit the line nicely ahead of his grand final, which is the Caulfield Cup. I think a few people scratching their heads, and I know Annabelle and Rob going, we probably expected more from him first up.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I really struggled to see many horses that I could be optimistic about going forward other than the winner out of that race. But that's not to say they won't bounce back. We see it time and time again, and particularly from certain stables. I'm happy to forgive one, early run where you're a touch flat. If your aim is to be running over, 24 or 32 later on in the carnival, it's not the end of the world. But I agree. Plastic Carousel, we were talking before we hopped on. There was an excuse there, and some horses handle problems better than others. She's thrown a shoe and just become a mess.
Yeah,
and maybe the race was run before she even jumped out of the gate.
Hearing from Mark and the team, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, she pulled a shoe on the way to the gates. She had to get reshod behind the gates, and she's just got herself into a lather, into a state. And, that's unfortunate. As you said, some horses deal with it better than others. I'd forgive her as well. That wasn't her grand final. They were expecting a forward showing. I still think she ran okay. I don't think she was, horrendous. But that's one thing we've all got to just take stock of. Underwood 1,800 metres, all these horses are heading likely towards Metrops and Caulfield Cups, Melbourne Cups possibly going forward. I wouldn't discount much. There's, maybe a fitness run for both of those horses in the end. They would have liked to have collected a check, but nothing to be lost out of that.
You weren't smitten with the Buckaroo form.
Oh, I wasn't, and I was wrong there.
So he's elevated.
Yeah.
A magic man maybe with the magic touch. But
great steer.
I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
If you've got a track where, it's every favour to be up on speed, you do maybe discount them a touch, take some points off for next time. But, That was a really good win.
I was wary of that day. And all throughout the day on Saturday, whether it be at Caulfield or at Randwick, I was just wary of that form. I just kept on in the back of my mind. I was like, just got to keep coming back to the fact that you were hard up, on rail, on speed that day. And I had to just take it with a grain of salt. But Buckaroo, he has proven us incorrect, and he's on the up, and that gelding operation has done the trick.
So this recap, I'm not really enjoying it.
No, we got to live.
No. All right. We'll
Maybe
live
we do that this week with the storylines that we've got coming up, particularly at Rosehill Gardens. Let's start with the golden pendant for the mares. And Amelia's Jewel, she gets an opportunity to win her first big Sydney race on Saturday. But the thing is, we got rain, and they have said at the start of the preparation, we do not want rain.
So the question is, do they end up there if they do run? Because, she said she would flat out avoid it. I don't know that we're going to be heavy.
I'm working off a soft 7 doing the form at the moment.
Yeah.
As a result, I think it's Samana's race to lose in terms of the map, in terms of track conditions, in terms of her dropping down in grade from that hot Group 1, the Wink Stakes. I think she's a Group 2 kind of mare. They've tried her at Group 1 level a lot of times.
I think you're underselling her.
I love her. I'm a big fan of hers, but I think this is her race.
Yeah.
This is her race on the weekend, 1,400 metre, right in her sweet spot.
I think she'll pinch a Group 1.
I think she will too, and I hope she does because particularly for Dylan Gibbons, she is like his headline horse. He absolutely adores her, and she's just been beaten by a few better on a number of occasions. She wins this, doesn't she?
Yeah. I hope so. My money hopes so. Heritage Stakes. So we get to see Bodyguard, and James Harron has an Everest slot. So it's not really an Everest audition, except to say if Bodyguard goes absolutely terribly, it might be a slot that's up for grabs. It's probably the Espionage slot that's become the Bodyguard slot. I don't want to talk out of school. It may have always been planned for Bodyguard, but if it's neither of them, then suddenly there might be an opportunity for someone else. And we need opportunities. I mean, part of me hopes to see Bodyguard run really well, but I don't want to see Private Eye missing out on an Everest. And who else have we got in that group? So think about it. Private Eye.
Me and Giga Kick. They're the ones I think at the moment who are really looking around with only a couple of slots not taken, but also there's other slot holders who would definitely prefer to put their own horse into the race, like James Harron. Obviously he would love to see Bodyguard get there, and Coolmore and Yulong. I think Yulong, they've got probably 3 runners they can take, Chain of Light,
it'll be one of
Kamachi,
theirs,
or Straight Charge.
So it's
not Straight Charge.
So it's
what's the thing down? What's the good cult down in
Global?
Global Empire.
So it's
what's it called?
Yeah. So there's the ATC slot, and there's those 2 slots potentially. But we didn't even mention Overpass for Björn. He's openly said, hey, I want to go into the race first up because that gives the horse the best opportunity. If we get in, we get in. If not, we'll just win the Sydney Stakes. And they feel really confident. He worked in between races yesterday at Warwick Farm. They were really happy with everything he's doing. But it's just hard to see him getting in. If he doesn't get in, it kind of takes away from the race a touch. I think in a walkathon he could probably win. I don't think he's a strong winning chance, but I think he'd add that element. But without him, I just struggle to see where that early speed is.
I really like the way that Björn is marketing this in a way. So he's gotten Steffi Magnetica into the race this week. I think it's a great selection for Newgate and GPI. She's a mare on the up. She's already a Group 1 winner, but I think that we are going to see an improved mare season in, season out over the next year or 2 with her. I think she could be a real top liner. So I think a good selection there. But even Björn coming out going, you know what, we've figured Overpass out. It's taken us a bit of time, but we've got the runs on the board. He is best first up. Look at what he's done in the West.
Yep.
Last 3 preparations with a couple of quackers and a Winterbottom. Like I love it how he's just gone, this is it. Like take him or leave him, but I tell you what, I've figured him out, and this is how he's best suited to run the race of his life. I think it's smart.
See, I would rather have him. If we're just talking the same offer for every horse, just you're picking purely on winnability, you have no bias towards any, stable or breeding giant, I would have Overpass ahead of I Am Me.
Mm-hmm.
But then where do you kind of peg the rest? So the other three are ahead, in my opinion, Private Eye and Think About It, as well as Giga Kick. What order would you have those three in if you had to choose?
If I had to take, I'd take Giga Kick at the moment.
Yeah.
The trial the other day was great. He is going to run a big race in the Premier. The more we reflect on it, he was so unsuited to that first up assignment. Big weight, 1,000 meters, a year off. I was a fool for jumping into him, but I liked what I saw in the trials. And then I saw him in the yard and was like, "Ooh, okay, you're going to need this run," and he did. I'd have Giga Kick. I think Overpass. And from the other three that you've mentioned.
Overpass ahead of Think About It or Private Eye.
Think About It. We need to see him back to his best. He had that, and we've spoken about it on the podcast a number of times. He had the preparation where he was stretched out in trip. It was an experiment. It didn't work out. And I need to see him back to his winning ways to be confident. Whereas we've seen Giga Kick hit the line super stylishly first up with conditions completely against him. And you go, "Oh, you're going to improve from that." I mean, the horse obviously doesn't need a huge amount of racing before heading into an Everest, and that's why Joe's holding him off until the Premier and following the same pattern as last year. But it's a risk.
You'd be pretty flat if you had a couple of horses fighting it out one year and neither of them get in the next year.
Yeah.
I just can't see that happening.
You know what? I would love to take all of those horses in to the Everest, but the thing is, the way the slots are structured at the moment, there's not enough gaps for them. Like, they're not all going to get starts. They're just not.
No. Will Bustling be there?
So the Heritage, we spoke about Bodycard. Initially, this was meant to be plan B, I guess, for Bustling to come out of that run in the Run to the Rose, which was subpar, and then head to the Heritage. They don't want a wet track. That's what we've heard. So that's the reason why they're not going to the Heritage, because we are going to have a soft track, we presume, on Saturday at Rosehill Gardens. It's just something, I don't know. There's something a bit iffy about it. Do you agree?
I agree.
So he's going to the Premier.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a hot Premier.
It is. And you know what? You could not possibly back. It's early, but you couldn't back him off what you saw last time against
Do you think
Everest
they
caliber horses.
Okay, so say he went to the Premier and he was okay, not like jumping out of the ground brilliant. Would you, if you were the slot holders, would you go, "You know what? We got to look elsewhere. We got to."
No. I'd push on.
You push on.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Because it's been their plan. Just don't abandon your plan. Stick with it. If he runs terribly, if he runs more like a Busted than a Bustling, I would give it away. Manikato.
Yeah.
We don't talk up administrators too often. Although
MVRC.
although in fairness, we don't talk them down that often on here either. But I think they deserve a clap.
Moonee Valley, I tip my lid to you.
Yeah.
You've done some great things over the last couple of months, and this is another one. Moving the Manikato to this slot as a lead up to the Everest and conceding that the ultimate sprint prize during the spring is the Everest.
Yeah.
We'll use this Group 1. And the Manikato is a great race. It is a ripping race. Let's move it to Grand Final Eve. Like, it's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with it.
Yeah. And Jack Ginnivan isn't in the grand final. So it makes it easier for him. No, I agree. The placement makes so much more sense, and it's one of those rare times where it looks as though the ecosystem is functioning properly.
What do you like in the Manikato? Like, I think Growing Empire, great, amazing placement to go, "You know what? We were going to go to the Danehill, I think." And they've gone, "Nah, let's throw them in the deep end. Let's go big time, baby. Let's go to the Manikato and face all these superstars in a hot Group 1.
Well, you get your
1200.
benchmark, don't you?
Yeah, you'll find out.
Did you think that we would see I Wish I Win in between?
Upon reflection and probably going back on his form, like 3 to 4 weeks, but Yeah, they definitely I thought they kicked off the preparation early for him.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Oh, well, yeah, I'd never question them. I was just wondering whether they might just skip straight into an
Yeah.
Everest knowing that they would, be in. But I'm really glad to see it there. Probably the horse to beat. But, yeah, I hope Growing Empire's every bit as good as they think.
Going to have something each way on Hayasuki.
Yes, it was a really good run, I thought, last time
I
out.
reckon she's flying.
Golden Rose race of the spring so far, in your
Yeah.
opinion?
100%.
Yeah.
Because you get the clash of the Titans. There's so much at stake in terms of the Golden Rose on Saturday. 3-year-olds Group 1, this is a stallion-making race, and the honour roll shows us that. And every kind of one of the top liners in the field that are sitting in those first 3, 4, 5 lines of betting, there's a story there. So broadsiding, he's a 2-time Group 1 winner. He's going first up into a Golden Rose. You said last week hasn't been done for 20 years.
Yep.
Traffic warden, he's kind of flown under the radar until 2 weeks ago where he won.
Did he?
Well, I don't know.
He was on a few people's radar.
You know what I mean though. Like he was
Storm Boy.
and like the story with Storm
Everett.
Boys. Everett.
Yeah.
Linebacker.
Yeah. Linebacker was the real eye catcher in the run to the Rose, and you know that the trip is going to be suitable. What do you think weather-wise? Who does it kind of suit? Everett could come into it if we got into that sort of really heavy range.
The 3 I think it suits are broadsiding, linebacker, and Tropicus.
Right.
Wet ground doesn't worry him. Draws a better gate. I don't think he can win it, but I reckon he can run a drum. Like he's been that first run in the San Domenico,
Yeah,
like
beautiful.
flashing light, had to be taken well back last start and still flashed home well. Up to the 14, tick.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot to like about him getting into finishing in the minor money on Saturday.
Broadsiding, I'm a touch conflicted because they get a lovely suck run. The ground would be absolutely no drum whatsoever. Although I did hear James say this morning, he doesn't want to venturing into heavy. He's happy just sting out, nice, soft.
Yeah.
He'll probably get his wish as well. But as soon as you venture into that heavy range, even if you've got one that loves it, early in a prep against horses that have had a few runs,
100%.
it's harder. Traffic Warden maps to get a beautiful run. I think Linebacker will settle a lot closer, as we've seen. Last prep, as soon as they get up in trip, they're sort of a bit more positive and drawn to maybe have to be a touch aggressive. So, yeah, I think Linebacker's the horse to beat. And then probably Traffic Warden, broadsiding not too far behind, and happy to just keep my powder dry with Storm Boy. But as you said, whoever wins, the storyline will be elite. And that's the fun part.
Storm Boy, the other thing that's interesting about him this Saturday is the barrier extension. So the big boy can't quite fit in the gates. And maybe that's why he has been just marginally skipping out and missing it a bit. So they've just added the extension, meaning he's got a little bit more room to breathe and move and just feel his feet. And that could make a difference as to how he jumps on Saturday. So it can't hurt his chances.
No, absolutely not. And it was exacerbated by the fact that he got squeezed by the stablemate shortly after the start. And Ode kind of took a little bit of his room. And so it exacerbated it. I don't think he missed it as bad as maybe it looked optically. Having had a chat to Hippo yesterday, the interview sort of followed a very familiar path. In fact, before I even chatted to him, I said, good luck saying anything different to what you've said previously. We're just going through the motions in this interview. But at the very end, I said, are you confident you're on the best horse in the race? One word, yes.
His confidence
He's never wavered.
Doesn't waver.
No, he's a believer, and good on him. He'd be a story in itself.
Yeah.
Given he was on, got the boot for James, we got the boot for Ryan, Hippo hops back on. Given everything that's happened over the past few years, he'd be an amazing story in itself.
It would be full circle as well, because obviously when he came back from that suspension, the first big moment for him was the Magic Millions, where he got on Storm Boy from the get go and ends up winning the Magic Millions, and that was a great thrill for him, particularly for Gay and the relationship that they have. But yeah, it just feels like it comes full circle in the 12 months, because it's been up and down, isn't it?
Yeah.
And no one would begrudge anybody who owns any of these colts a big win, because they all put in a huge amount of money into the sport. and they're all trying to find the next superstar stallion. So
And
whoever
isn't
wins
easy. It's not easy.
it's bloody hell, it's not easy.
I wouldn't be surprised if almost any horse in the race won, though.
Yeah.
People are discounting an Ode. Well,
I think he needs a dry track.
I know, but he split the two last time.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But he split the two last time. Like, I don't know. They've all got merit and they've all got a story.
Yeah, for sure. We moved down to Moonee Valley on Friday night. So we've got the Manikato. But the real headline act, arguably on Friday night, is the Feehan because it's a field of 4 and it's the headline clash of Pride of Jenny and Mr. Brightside with Patrician and Tino just jumping in for the fun.
Yeah. well, I think they're jumping in for the
We
fun.
think. I mean, we can market it like that. You got to put it some way, and I think that's the best way of marketing it.
I hope it doesn't sound disrespectful to them. I really hope that they run a huge race. But it is being marketed as nearly the closest thing to a match race as we can get. And normally, say on a Wednesday, geez, I've done it on this podcast, I'd be whinging about a 4-horse field. But in a strange way, it makes it.
I agree. And when I first saw completed fields yesterday, I sat there for a good 15 minutes going, I can't decide if this is great or awful. And I've come around to the fact that I think it's great.
So if it was, if it were just the two of them, it'd
I'd
be the
be
best.
amazing.
It'd be the best. And it would be the most stressful time of Craig Williams' life.
For turnover, though, obviously it's not good having 4 runners.
No, it isn't.
But for a spectacle.
But even if you had, apart from if you had Via Sistina in and you thought that that horse might be able to bounce back, beyond that, what percentage is going to be outside of Pride of Jenny and Mr. Brightside anyway?
100%.
For that race. Maybe 20 to 30 tops.
Yeah.
So, I think people will still pick their mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it'll be a quiet betting race just because there's those
and
two.
Friday night lights, the Valley, Melbourne will be buzzing.
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, it'll be good.
That's going to be unreal. Hey, before we get our Saturday selections, I just wanted to do a little recap of spring punting laws. Do you have any that you really live and die by, particularly at this time of year? Because I find that my punting laws change depending on the season.
Right.
And there's some, particularly in spring, that I've got more in my mind than others. But there's ones that I live.
Give me a couple of yours and I'll see what springs to mind.
First one is beware of the grand final. So the Underwood's a great example. People getting so excited about horses first up over the 18 when you know they're going to reach. It's just cart and horse stuff, right? Happy with that?
Yep.
Horses for courses, particularly over short trips. Mornington Glory, Moya, 4 from 4, 1,000 at the Valley.
I am me.
Yeah. That's a real one.
We've
right?
seen it a couple of times.
But mainly with sprinting.
Yeah. Well, this season it has been because you want to get dragged into the lure of the, say, Giga Kicks and I Wish I Wins and Private Eyes and when they're resuming over 1,000, it's tough. Yeah.
Do you believe that Brisbane Carnival residual fitness is a thing?
I think I've changed my mind this year. Yes, it is, but I've always been very happy to take on horses that are well performed over the winter coming into the spring. I just think it's a tier below. But when you suddenly look at, say, your broadsidings coming through and how well Steffi Magnetica ran and a few are just maybe bucking the trend a touch. And I'll say this much, it's my favourite time of year almost going up to Queensland for that carnival now. It has elevated a touch and maybe trainers have got even better at managing that gap between the seasons. Yeah.
I've always wary of horses jumping from their maiden to whether it be a class 1 or a 64 or whatever it is. I'm really wary of that, particularly this time of year, because I think we can all get really carried away when we see a horse, say, win at, I don't know, Newcastle or Kembla or something like that. And
or say a benchmark 72 and then go up against proven Group 1 winners.
I mean, that's one that we couldn't have. To be fair, when it came to see the placement of Autumn Glow in that 72, I was like, alarms, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
There was something in that. Horses carrying below the minimum on wet tracks.
Okay.
So anytime you see a horse who's about to peak with below the mim, that's for me a bit of a red light. Cardiac arrhythmia bounce back.
Yeah, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
That's a real thing for a couple of reasons. I'd need to have a look to see whether there's a performance peak off the back of it. I don't think it is that. I think it's more from an SP side of things. So the market forgets. It sees, the computer spits out a 33 length last, and suddenly a horse that maybe should have been $5 off the back of
Is
its performance
12.
to start prior. Exactly.
Yeah, gotcha.
So I think they perform above market expectation
Sweet.
as opposed to performing above what they were doing prior to the cardiac arrhythmia.
Happy to
Yeah.
take the
Yeah.
overs there, though.
Oh, yeah. I believe it is a positive ROI. First up off the back of cardiac arrhythmia. If you were to level stake on every galloper doing it, it's a positive ROI, which
Mares
is
in form.
remarkable. Mares in form's true, for sure. But it's not as true as mares out of form. They just struggle to get back into it.
Yeah. But if a mare's in form, follow her through.
Yep.
The shift from Sydney to Melbourne. So the placement of horses.
SF.
The SF.
SF. Yeah, Via Sustina put a real...
Yeah, but I think we can blame track
Pop
conditions
that
partially
bubble.
on that.
Yeah, what? Yeah, it was definitely a thing the past 2 springs, but the reverse side, geez, they've got better, at sending horses from Melbourne to Sydney, and we see it at the midweeks all the time.
Mhm.
And even on Saturdays, Freedmans have been regularly sending horses up and just winning at will. We've had
To be fair, they've been stabled up here for a while.
Yeah. Well, what about Price and Kent Jr.?
Yeah.
They've been coming here. Ma was doing it so often he decided to just live up here.
Mm.
So, maybe they sort of have been better prepared in that they're not just doing a road trip and running, and they are stabling up here or staying up here for a period. But I think it goes both ways.
On speed bias, do you just look for Waterhouse, Bot, Clark?
Where?
Rail out.
Rail out.
7 metres.
Canterbury.
Or Canterbury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yesterday at the midweeks, they had a horse first up in Australia over 2100, and it had a relatively tough run, launching a run from maybe the 500 and a sitting duck for the final 3 and proved too strong. And I just said to Adrian, I've got so many things I want to ask, but off the top, how do you do it when no one else seems to be able to?
Hey, before we leave and do Saturday selections, we've got a special guest, and this is a lovely story to finish the show on. So headphones on for this one.
Okay.
Because Keagan Latham is one of the hardest working men in racing. He's also I reckon, one of the nicest guys in racing. And boy, does he have a story to tell about the week that he's had. Off you go, Ben.
Set the scene for him. Why not?
Keegs.
Hey guys, how are you?
Or Superman, as we like to refer to him now, who, you know what? You described him as a nice guy. We've seen that through the past couple of days. So I'll set the scene, Keegs. We've got a young, non-verbal, autistic girl who's left her place at Hawkesbury. It's a rural area, essentially, so it's surrounded by bushland. She's gone missing. Police are involved. Helicopter searches. The fireys are there. The SAS, I think, are there as well. SES. They've all headed along, and they're all searching for this girl and struggling. And you've taken it upon yourself to go out there and look for her as well. And it's one of those stories that you just, as soon as you hear it, you think, oh, this is not going to end well. But thankfully, come 6:30 p.m., when it was already dark, there was a positive spin to it. And you were out there searching with another couple of guys and were a major part in having her found. Tell us how it all played out, and just before you even get into it, well done.
I really appreciate that. It's quite a crazy turn of events, to be honest. My wife Nancy, she obviously follows a few Facebook forums of the local area, and she said that this autistic girl had gone missing, and you kind of think, they'll find her in a couple of hours, and a few hours had gone by, and it was beginning to get a bit dark in the area, and she was still missing. So I opted to drive up to Glossodia, which is probably about 20 minutes from where I am. And when you getting there, you can see the amounts of cars and the amounts of local community that are really getting involved in trying to find her. And because of her autism and the fact that she she was nonverbal, you really kind of worried about how much you could actually do, because you could be calling out her name, Ava, and you're not going to get much of a response, So it's literally going to be just a matter of being able to see her to spot her. And when I first got there, I parked up and there was obviously loads of cars around, and got out of the car and met these two guys that were kind of just standing right near where I'd just parked. One's Charles and his cousin Luke, and was just pretty much asking if they'd found her. And excuse me. And they said that the police wouldn't allow them into the property because they had the sniffer dogs out trying to get some sort of a scent. And when you hear that kind of thing, you think, oh, it's not looking really good at the moment. And while we were busy talking there, and deciding what our next plan of attack was, we could hear plover birds swooping down on a girl that was crying. And initially, we just thought that it was a girl that belonged to that specific property. And we actually thought, now hang on a second, there's no one around to help this girl, and she just got her hands above her head.
So you could see her, Keegs? You could.
Yes, she was only maybe about 50 meters from where I'd parked up.
Wow.
So it was just completely coincidental that we were just in the right place at the right time to spot her. And like I say, it was getting pretty dark at this point, so we could only just make her out. And so we both ran into the property, and we could see that she still had her nappy on, and she just had a
Oh.
shirt, and obviously matched the description of what she had been given to us. And so we picked her up. We obviously asked if she was Ava, but like I say, she's obviously was autistic, so she couldn't respond to that. But we knew well that it was her, and yeah, we took her back down to where everybody else was, and there was a lot of applauding, and people very, very over the moon that she'd been found. And Charles, the guy that picked her up here, he was the one that took her up to the house, and pretty much handed her back over to her parents.
Yeah, it is hard because the police in these instances, they are often saying, don't all come to the area because
Makes it more convoluted and
it,
difficult.
it does. But the locals are the ones who know the areas
Mm.
best, and clearly you heard and thought, hang on, this area is pretty dicey. So she was in a nappy and a shirt. So, it gets pretty cool at night, even though it's been unseasonably warm. If she's out there all night, we might be talking about a completely different result. You guys have essentially saved a young girl's life.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I think it also hit home with Charles as well, who is the father of 3 kids and one having autism as well. So he made the
Mm.
journey out from Grosvale, and so it was just like I say, right place, right time. That all 3 of us were there, and there's no doubt that the same property was passed by multiple other people.
Yeah.
But because of these plover birds that had been swooping on it, she had obviously gone into hiding, and they had completely missed her. And she'd obviously got to a certain time of the day, or night, should I say, where she's beginning to get a bit hungry, and decided to come out and try and find some sort of other human. And these birds started swooping on her again, causing her to cry. But her cry was the best thing that could have happened, because it
Mm.
allowed us to find her.
I'll never curse a swooping plover bird ever again,
Oh,
which
gosh.
I've done a million times.
Because they're terrifying.
Terrifying.
Keegs, you're a legend, mate.
Oh,
Well
this-
done for just because sometimes like if you're in whether you're up in the Hawkesbury area or where I live or wherever you live, sometimes there are those alerts and you go, I don't want to be a pest. I don't want to go and
Mm.
involve myself because you don't want to insert yourself into a situation. But if you feel really strongly that you can help out,
Mm.
go and do it. Like
Yeah.
don't be scared of helping for someone who needs the help, and that's what Keegs has done, and he got a result.
Yeah, in my past life as a police reporter, often the police would say, hey, we'll look after the search, but, you can be bringing them food and coffees and, there's lots of things that you can do. And I'm sure Keegs was thinking, hey, I just need to get down there and help in whatever capacity I can do. Very quickly before we let you go, mate, have you met the parents at all? Did you happen to see? I know that the other fellas brought her up there, but did you get to see their response or their joy?
No, I didn't. I didn't at all. Once because Charles got her, took her into the police car and took her up because there was obviously a car full of policemen. I just kind of was like, well, job done.
Yeah.
Off we go home now, and it was a fantastic result. And I know exactly where they live, so maybe when things have all died down, it'd be nice to take a trip up there and just introduce myself and see how little Ava's doing.
Take them some treats maybe that Nancy and the kids can bake, and I'm sure you gripped your two little kids very tightly the next day as well. Hey, before you go though, you got something coming up for us? You got something that you like over the next couple of weeks?
Hang on. This is an interview about him being a hero,
but
and you're trying to get an edge.
We're racing shows. Geeks knows me. You got anything?
Not as yet. I mean, as you know, the jockey room is quite a tough place to be at the moment. There's many jocks out there, many very good jocks out there that are all scrapping for the same ride. So I don't have anything to look forward to as such. But I'm sure your little filly will be coming
She's
back. There you go. So
Yeah.
hopefully, if J-Mac will allow me, I'd like to jump back on her.
She's
Good luck.
back in work, and she will be hopefully off to the trials in a couple, probably 3-4 weeks' time. So she's yours, mate.
Perfect.
There you go.
Love it. Thanks
Keagan
very much,
Latham.
Keegs. Good to have you on.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
He's one of the real nice guys, great rider as well, and he's ridden a few winners for me personally, and very generous with his time with owners and whatnot, but obviously very generous with his time outside of racing and being able to help people in need.
So we think has peaked.
We cannot beat what we've done today.
No.
Saturday selections, anything you want to throw out there as something you're going to back on the weekend?
No, not particularly. Anyone who is keen to join in, 7 p.m, STC, Black Bookers.
Is this your goal in
You can
life
play
to
catch up as
dual
well.
promote on both shows?
I just think it's a nice avenue to maybe steer them towards a highly rated tipping show with years of success.
So you got nothing for our
No.
humble...
Linebacker will be on top in the big one.
Who's that?
Linebacker.
Linebacker.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's
I
hope
told
he
you
can
that. I'm team traffic warden for life, but I told you off the back of that last run, I'm in linebackers camp.
Let's hope he can behave in the yard.
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah. I think the less said about that, the better. You?
Samana's my best bet of the weekend, I reckon.
Okay.
Her race. She's short though, but I think it's her race.
Good luck.
Hey, so we think, thanks for joining us. Next week, we head to Royal Randwick again for multiple Group 1 races. I'm really looking forward to it. The Metrop, the Epsom, wowee. It's going to be a good weekend, but hope it's a profitable one for you this Saturday at Rosehill Gardens.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.